we've received a lot of love in the past for these webinars that we've been hosting. And before I get into the details about the webinar, I would like to first talk about Indian Lawyers Association. Indian Lawyers Association is a voluntary professional organization for the legal professionals of India. Membership of this is usually for lawyers, judges, professors, and students. The ILA has been formed to shape the future of legal profession, and ILA is committed to enable opportunities for quality professional development, support the enhancement of quality in the legal profession, and also to promote the delivery of justice. This being said, now Kelp has been established in 2013. Kelp is a forward-thinking organization committed to revolutionizing workplaces into safe, happy, and inclusive work environments. With an unwavering belief, we think that employee well-being is integral to organizational success, and we endeavor to set new standards in HR practices, as well as overall organizational performance. We believe that we will forefront workplace safety for all and create inclusive spaces. We work in the areas of PoSH, DEI, and employee wellness. So welcome everyone for today's ILA and Kelp collaborative webinars that we do every month. Um, this month, our topic is very interesting. It is preventing sexual harassment at office celebrations and offsite events. So this is just to say that it's all good to have fun and partying with respect. But at the same time, are we thinking about workplace safety? Are we thinking about making the space enjoyable for everyone? And how do we go about it? So I'll let Darshi and Amita introduce themselves first. Maybe Amita can go first, and then Darshi can introduce, and then we can start with the session.
Thanks, Meenakshi, and a very good evening to everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank Kelp HR for and Indian Lawyers Association for inviting me and giving this opportunity. My name is Amita Nijhawan. I work with Oberoi Realty. I lead the talent management, L&D, and DEI vertical at Oberoi. I have worked in diverse sectors across, various HR portfolios like HR generics role, industrial relations. I started my career with industrial relation, and then I moved to other, roles in HR. So really looking forward to this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Amita. My name is Darshi, which is short for Priyadarshi Bhattacharya, long and too confusing on too many accounts. I head HR for a company called Swiss Re. I'm based out of Bangalore. It's roughly around a little over 25 odd years of working for other people. From an experience standpoint, it's been mostly in the financial services GCC domain. For most of my career, I was heading HR for DBS before this, DBS Tech. Worked for organizations like HSBC and ANZ Bank before that. But I started my career with the Indian Armed Forces in the late 90s, served for 6 years as a short service commission officer before I transitioned from a military world into the world of HR, and here I am. So really looking forward to this discussion. Thank you firstly to Kelp for kind of putting this together, and great to know that some of our experiences can be shared with the ILA, and hopefully would love to learn from everyone here on the podcast as well. Over to you, Meenakshi.
Thank you so much. I accidentally shared the wrong screen, and pardon me for that. These mistakes. Anyway, I would also like to introduce myself. I am your moderator for today. My name is Meenakshi, and I'm a lawyer by training, and I also have been working with Kelp for almost 2.5 years as a PoSH and DEI expert. I have been exploring law and development as a concept, and I love facilitating such discussions where we bring in conversations around legal provisions and how to implement them with more nuanced understanding of today's workplace. So that being said, I will just start with certain questions that we will have. I'm just going to pin it to Darshi first. The question would be to, sorry, the first question is to Amita. I just wanted to ask, how do you think employee behaviors shift in informal settings, like office parties or offsite events, and what challenges does this even present?
The timing of this particular webinar. So I think we are, next week is Diwali, and I'm sure that a lot of organizations must be, planning their Diwali parties and, events, various events. So I feel the difference why the behavioral shifts is usually we are used to, see people in their own boundaries, office space boundaries, where the environment is mostly formal. But when we talk about such events, so yeah, people, there are certain blur boundaries. Atmosphere is more casual, and mainly maybe people take this opportunity to unwind, but at the same time balancing, the professional front, or rather creating that respectable environment even outside maybe the office premises. Maybe you are hosting a party in a hotel or something like that. So it becomes, I think that becomes challenging. It is very difficult to maintain that balance. So I think that is maintaining that balance is a key challenge which I think organizations will face for such informal events.
Right. So I think it's also like, we are almost saying that right now, with the fact that we are all living in a world where every individual spends almost 60 minimum percentage of their life spending at of their day at work. So we are interacting with people, and we are also seeing these modern relationships emerge, and we are seeing so many different kinds of ways that people are trying to bring in work life balance within the work. So how do we cope with the changing environments? So it's very important that we have these morale boosting events where we are like having some kind of parties or offsites, and it does get difficult for people who are in the organizing front to bring that out. So I would like now to bring this question to Darshi, saying, does the workplace definition, if you are saying a workplace sexual harassment, where do we stop the workplace, and where does it till where do we define workplace as, and does it extend beyond the physical space? Do events occurring in these off-site or like office parties or like all of these spaces, do they get covered under workplace, because they are not meeting in a work capacity, they are meeting in a more chilled out capacity, if I were to say, for the lack of a better word?
Yeah. So it's a very complex gray world on this topic, but I think in my view, it does. So to me, the way I would look at it, and that's the advice that we have got from a lot of our legal consultants that we worked with in the past, a lot of like the esteemed folks on the call today. My understanding of this is very clear. Any organization event that is set up outside the office premises but is formally announced. There are two kinds of situations that arise. One situation where, let's say, I have a team of 20 people at the end of something, a major project getting completed or something celebratory, we all decide to step out for a dinner. Maybe it's everybody is kind of going Dutch, so to speak. So everybody's paying for the event from their own side. So it's a completely informal event, and the company is not organizing it on their behalf. It's a decision taken by a set of individuals to go out and have a good time. In such cases, decorum and basic principles of good behavior and code of conduct still apply, because once this event ends, you still need to meet in the office tomorrow. So that is still relevant. However, I don't think that in those cases we can look at it as an extended place of work. However, In cases where a Diwali event has been organized in a hotel, an offsite has been organized in Goa or in Coorg or wherever you are, or in the outskirts of any city, or you've organized an event that is bound to go on till late into the night. You've organized an event where end-to-end responsibility of the event and the safety and well-being of all employees is the organization's prerogative, in which case it will spill over as an extension of the workplace. It would even go one step further to say that even if you're traveling from one place to another for such an official event, even if you're traveling by a company provided cab, that cab is an extended workplace. So to me, I think it's very clear. Anything which has been officially organized by the organization, and there is an inherent expectation from the employee that the employee is going to be there at that event as an employee, then the construct of an extended workplace will apply there. All elements of code of conduct, all elements of PoSH will apply to that specific place. So while it's a gray world, to me, this is very, very clear. Now, I have had in my personal experience multiple cases where people after this event have gone out together somewhere. A group or a set of people have stepped out. Then that stops being again an extended workplace. And that's a decision being taken by these individuals on their individual account as responsible, mature adults. In which case, we can't maybe pull it to that extreme, but I think for anything that's organized by us, it needs to be managed by the company.
Okay. Amita, do you have a similar take on this? Can I hear from you on this as well?
Yeah, so Darshi has very well summarized it. And yes, as per the Act, also, if you see extended workplace, so which covers, maybe it's a hotel where, suppose somebody is traveling for a conference. So even the hotel where the person is, maybe it's a overnight stay, and there is accommodation. So that will also be covered. If I talk about my previous experience, I come from an aviation background. So there as well are, there were a lot of maybe they are pilots, they are cabin crew who used to travel across, other countries. There was a hotel which was involved. There was, on the flight, which is not a physical workplace. And also there were layovers, in different countries. But across all this, they were covered. So yes, it is an extended workplace because they are traveling for a reason there, because the company has sent, right? So they are, covered. However, I feel that like just an example which Darshi quoted, after party, if they are going somewhere, but and if they so if you see the company is not responsible otherwise, but if there is a scenario where there is a case which is reported, so I think still the IC as a, because ultimately the relationship they were in that party because of the office relationship. It was a after party. However, and they have to come back to work later on, and whatever happened there, maybe it might impact their workplace relationship as well. So
Yeah.
somewhere I think as a IC or the organization should interrupt if required, I feel.
See, so I totally agree. I think there are different stances on what we think is a workplace. So the law says any place that a person is visiting out of a work relationship, right? So it doesn't specify on organization sponsored events, or it does not specify on the fact that it has to be limited to your physical workplace. It goes into online workplaces. It also is additionally, like for example, if I have been asked for a dinner by from my colleague, me rejecting a dinner might mean that I am not building or acting in team spirit. So even though the organization doesn't always sanction everything that I go for, maybe I'm going to that place to maintain a certain work relationship. There was a case wherein we were discussing whether a colleague who has invited everyone over for a Ganpati party at their house. Uh, this was one manager who invited everyone to their house, and there an incident happened with an employee's wife by the manager who invited. Now, you wouldn't normally, if I'm going to a workplace, I wouldn't randomly decline invitations for lunch or dinner at colleagues' places. And I'm going just because I want to maintain a work relationship. Otherwise, I will probably be labeled as the boring person who doesn't show up at other people's houses. So, it's important to see what an employee is doing, what's their life cycle, and why they are there in a personal capacity or if they are there in an organizational capacity. So while we have a lot of conversations around it, it's important to for us to think on all these perspectives and then maybe go ahead. So I really like both the perspectives where even Darshi said that, like, if you're going for an offsite company sponsored event, then the organization still has a responsibility. Like, there might be other things involved in that kind of a situation, but organization has a responsibility to create that workplace safety for the employees who are coming for these events. So that being said, it brings me to my next thought on what are the strategies can organizations use to set clear expectations for respectful behavior at casual work events. Because if we say respectful, it can also borderline go into the realm of people thinking we are just being very strict and rigid or orthodox in how we are functioning. So how do we go about that? Darshi, would you like to take a start on this one?
Yeah, I can. I think it's essentially it comes down to awareness. So for organizations like the one that I represent, we have a very, very strong code of conduct that clearly articulates what appropriate behavior means. And that's very important, right? The element of PoSH comes in later. The very first thing is that how should an employee behave when he or she is in the company or an extended workplace is very, very clearly defined. So I think it comes down to awareness. Second, one of the things that we have been doing in recent times is that we reiterate some of the code of conduct elements and some of the PoSH elements before every event. Now, that can be construed as being a little too rigid, but I would rather be seen as a little rigid than kind of end up in a bit of a sticky situation, so to speak. So from our perspective, one of the steps that we have taken is that it's primarily about awareness and just continue to just build that awareness even before such organizational events are being held. So there is no confusion left about what you can or can't do, because quite often it comes back as I didn't know, I didn't realize, I had done the PoSH training 3 years back. I've forgotten some things. There are also elements like that we need to keep in mind is that this is a legal field as well, and things that are happening in court, many cases ending up in court, there are different judgments coming out. As new judgments come out, the policies in your company and the code of conduct in your company also may need to be refined over time. So don't assume that the training that you ran 3 years back is still relevant. So hence it's very important that that level of awareness is very important. And I think the only other part, and I know this is going to be very controversial, but the only other part that I tend to get very stressed about is when I see alcohol on the list of things that is going to be served in a very large office event, for the only reason that it's not to suggest that I mean, the presence of alcohol will ensure something bad happens. But quite often, what tends to happen as human beings, alcohol does lower inhibitions. And especially with a very young demographic, like in my company, in a lot of the companies that I've worked in, not just here, I can even go back to my days in uniform, which is a long time back, 1998 to 2004. And even back in those days, for a lot of our boys, a lot of you will, I'm sure, know drinking is a very inherent part and culture and parcel of the army life. And there would be so many incidents of inebriated behavior coming out, and didn't necessarily lead to PoSH events, but it was something that we needed to deal with. So in my experience, I have found that we need to have very strong guidelines around the availability of alcohol. I'm not saying you shouldn't have it, but if you're keeping it, then keep it restricted. And maybe also plan to have a few people, particularly the leaders. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about the importance of how leaders set the context. But I think it's very important for some of the leaders to be observant during such situations. And if at any point of time they see any employee going a little out of control, they need to step in. So the little bit of proactive measures on the day of the event also help. So these are few of the things that I would typically recommend.
Right. Amita, what are your thoughts on what is the strategies that you have used or maybe you would want to use to maybe avoid such incidents? And I would say avoid and prevent and not say completely get rid of because it's impossible to do that.
Yeah. So to my mind, strategizing, this is not going to happen overnight. I think when we talk about, creating a safe atmosphere, maybe in an office workplace or maybe in an extended, event like, office party, it's a culture, creating a culture which is not going to happen overnight. So while we have our own journeys where, we create all the sensitization programs, mandatory e-learning courses, maybe in PoSH, code of conduct, etc. But that is mostly, when person joins the organization and eventually it starts fading. So I think reiterating, these code of conduct and having like a event code. So we have a event code, so it's not like very rigid, but we try to make clear that what are the do's and don'ts when we are having such, event in place. So we ensure we release it to the employees. We also, I strongly feel that the leadership and the people managers, they should be committed to, overall creating a safe place. And before such events, if they can talk, have a conversation with their own teams, and maybe in a subtle way, not like a very strict lecture or something, that how can we, ensure that while we are enjoying together, we are, having that team bonding, etc., is going on. However, please make sure that we, don't make anybody uncomfortable, and, it's inclusive environment, and everybody, the safety is not compromised at any cost. So I think that awareness and sensitization before such event is very important. Having said that, I also feel that there might be certain, so we can have, say, for example, HR representatives. We might have cross-functional, volunteers, which can act not like a policeman, but we can have, so they can be there around. They should be well trained in advance that if in case in an event they observe any such scenario, so how they should be trained how to be assertive, maybe how to assertively manage such situations. They cannot suddenly go and, push somebody if there's goes something wrong. So they need to be trained. So I think all these guidelines should be pre-released, and I think this debriefing should be done well in advance, and I think it will help in addressing such events.
Yeah. That really makes sense to have, like, those monitoring bodies. And also at Kelp, we often include bystander intervention in our trainings. So, which means that we kind of tell, even in employee awareness trainings, we always stress that you need to know how to set boundaries. You need to know how to react to such a situation if it's happening around you, and be an active bystander or any kind of bystander, but take action. So there are like a lot of things that come across, especially right now when the happiness meter is very high because of the holidays for a lot of people. There's Diwali parties coming up, there's Christmas parties coming up, Christmas vacations. So it's definitely going to be a time when if you say no alcohol, people might be a little like, um not okay with that or think that it's not working for them, and we get booed away. But like, like when Darshi said that when I get most concerned when I see alcohol, that's like a true HR thought process. Like if any other employee sees there's alcohol involved, they'll be like, yay, there's alcohol. But when HR sees, they're like, no, we don't want this.
You
you
know,
know
on a lighter note, it's one of those things that um, we joke about it, but when you have weddings, you invite 100, 200, 500, or depending on how many people you want to invite. Most people are probably not going to like the food, but it's okay. They will talk about it for 2 or 3 days afterwards, and that'll be the end of it. If you don't provide alcohol in an office event, there will be some amount of chitter chatter about it for a few days, and that's absolutely fine. But in my experience as an HR professional, I don't think things like this impact employee morale or engagement to the organization.
That's true.
They may not like it, but 3 days later they'll forget about it. What they are more likely to stay back for in the organization is for careers, for a safe workplace, for dignity and respect of when they work. So I would rather take the abuses on that day and live with the outcome that everything was under control, than to let loose bottles of alcohol and then be in a situation where it's not just, by the way, it's not just element of PoSH. A lot of these events that happen outside the workplace also happen quite often far away from the city. It can also mean lots of employees traveling back long distances at the end of that event, maybe not in a good state. And no matter how much you also try and encourage people to take public transport, or you organize your own transport, cabs, buses, so on and so forth, but there'll always be the odd person who wants to drive in themselves or will want to ride in on a bike. You are also endangering their lives in situations like this. So from a legal standpoint, there is also an extension of the safety and welfare of these individuals when you have alcohol in events which are far away from your workplace. So on the lighter note, but I would rather take the abuses. HR is
I hear,
considered evil any which way, so it's okay.
no, I hear you on that. Being a person in Posh, we've handled so many cases on just alcohol, so it does make sense. But moving beyond the alcohol, there is definitely a mindset that when we are in workplace, it's not like sexual harassment does not happen in a workplace when things are very professional. So as soon as we say a casual team dinner or casual offsite gathering, then what is it that, or what are the specific risks that you see in having certain events or certain issues that, and what is it? Is it can't be just alcohol, right? If we remove alcohol, doesn't mean it will completely stop. So I would like to know what are the specific risks other than this that a company takes through when they say that we are doing a casual gathering or offsite or a party. What is the mindset shift? Why does this suddenly become a bigger deal than regular workplace? I'm saying a regular workplace in correlation with extended workplace as a sentence. Yeah. So
I
I
think
think,
from my perspective, I just kind of highlighted a few of those risks. So I'll let Amita talk about it. But like I said, the first thing is that a lot of these events are typically far away. We are based in Bangalore, for example, my company, Bangalore and Hyderabad. A lot of our offsites are quite often near Kabini, near Coorg, near Uti, places which are 5-6 hours driving distance as well. Even our office, if it's a full 2000 employee event, even that will tend to be 30-40 kilometers outside of Bangalore, in some place that can accommodate that many number of people. Larger companies have even bigger problems. There are larger companies with 4,000, 6,000, 8,000 people. They need to go outside the city. So I think travel to and from that place, the logistics of that place, safety of that place, your vendors who are being brought in to run the entire event need to be equally part of your, um, you know, uh, way that you work as an organization. They need to be aligned with it completely. So those are all the risks that I would see, because most of these events are away from the city. We need to be aware of it. And I think Amita's example of where does the workplace end, especially if in the aviation industry, you are flying all over the world. There is technically probably no time that you're off duty. You're on duty. In my armed forces example, I can give you, there is no off time. There is no Sunday. The army is not on a holiday on Sunday. So every day is a work day. So it doesn't matter where you are. Sorry, Amita, yours.
Yeah, so I feel apart from the alcohol part and the logistics part, I feel that if we look at the current setup of the organizations, mostly we have different generations working together, right? We have Generation Z, we have Generation, X, and all the other generations are there in place. So the perception, etc., is completely different, to be. So there are different personal boundaries which every person has. So I think in such casual events, people feel it's okay to be casual. Okay, so I think that is one part which is associated. Secondly, for some of the people, it can be maybe they are experiencing this entire thing for the first time. It might be very overwhelming experience, and no matter how many sensitization or trainings, etc., that just goes away in the back of the mind. It's only that, oh, people are just, so maybe I think the boundary, where to draw that boundary, people don't know where they are getting overboard. And on the other side, some people don't know, how to stop the other person. They might feel, they might get offended, or they might feel bad, or again the creating maybe the boss subordinate relationship. So there are a lot of, I think, team dynamics which are involved. So while they are off work, but still that team dynamics can also walk into the picture. How do I say no to my maybe a superior? So I think all that hesitance, etc., the casual and plus the casual atmosphere. So I think all these risks are associated when we talk about such office events, apart from what we just were discussing till now.
That's true. Actually, when we met earlier to decide on this topic, there was something that I was speaking about that was about like this generational issue that there were new employees, and one of them went up to another employee and said that, do you want to be in a relationship with me, a casual relationship with me? And the female employee felt very like, it's when such a question is posed to you, you can't even go and tell the employee that the duty is on you to set a boundary, because the question in itself is very insulting for that individual because of the cultural difference. Even though they are probably from the same generation, but there is a gender difference, there's a cultural difference. She was very offended by that question. And the guy is like, what did I do wrong? I just asked her for consent. So, do you think the idea of consent also is something like, you see nowadays there are dating apps. Your colleagues are on very casual setups. So, do you think that casual events give rise to opportunity for people to ask out other employees, or like make these effort moves, or like, make whatever that language is around it? But do you think that because we are doing casual parties, the inhibitions automatically come down because it's no longer in a work setting and people are in a chiller environment? So do you think that happens? And what would you do if you would want to handle such a situation? Amita, you can maybe start with it,
Yeah.
and she can take on from there.
So I think such events, maybe it triggers, something which was there in a formal setup. Maybe somebody has something in mind, but they are not, actually it's not, they are not able to express, etc. So I think such events, casual events, maybe it gives an opportunity to somebody to, express themselves, because as I told you, the, atmosphere is very light, the boundaries are blurred, and in case alcohol comes into picture, so again, that loss of judgment might come into picture. So I think all this creates a certain, a loosened atmosphere, and maybe certain, people who are not able to express, they become more expressive. So I think that's my take on it. Darshan might like to add something.
Before the he adds here, I would like to also acknowledge that when he was saying something like, army never sleeps, or I've also grown up as a semi-army kid in the cantonment, so I can understand that the amount of effort that people put into these situations. So do you think when there inhibitions, or when there is a lot of stressful environment, I'm not just taking the army's example for it, but do you think a stressful environment, this is a question for you, also makes it more like, the more you repress a spring, the more it'll jump up? So do you think that is something that you have seen as a culture, and what do you think about this generational gaps also? I'd like to know.
Was
Sorry.
that for me, Meenakshi?
Yeah,
Or
it was.
for okay, cool. Um, armed forces, I don't think is the right reference point. I gave it as a reference point though, but you're right. The kind of events that we used to see even in the armed forces in situations like this, it's such a controlled and regimented environment that yes, you're right. When that opportunity to relax a little bit comes, things go completely out of hand quite often. And in the armed forces, to be fair, as officers, we are also trained to let it happen. It's okay, let it be. They need to have that let out. It's a very stressful life. As long as nobody is harming anybody else, it's okay. But that's a slightly different environment. In our corporate space, I agree. Yes, casual events or relatively, not the typical office premises can at times lower inhibitions, and I guess that's where sometimes such cases do come up to the PoSH committee of the council of the company. Um, we have seen with enhanced understanding of the law by employees as well, especially on part of the women. Quite often, just the act of somebody having approached can at times be viewed to be um, or put in the case as under PoSH. And in such cases, we've actually had to go and speak to the employee and understand that did you in fact even tell the individual that the advance was unwarranted, or did you set any line or boundary that this advance that you're making is unwanted. In the event of that, the intent then becomes a little crucial for us to identify. I know intent is very hard to find out, but during the course of the investigation, one of the things that the council may need to do, the council members may need to do, is try and understand on charges which are very very low level at this point, which is just somebody walking up and saying, "I would want to have a relationship with you. Do you want to have a dinner with me?" Or "I'm interested in you on whatever it is." Maybe the intent was not, there's no quid pro quo, assuming the person is not your boss or your super boss. If it's just a colleague approaching you, at times it may be prudent to understand what the intent is before you start to dole out um, punishments, which can be quite severe.
Hmm. Of course, severe punishments is never an option to bring in workplace safety. I always believe that there is a sense of rehabilitation unless and until the case is really, really severe. And I'm sorry that we are putting levels to sexual harassment here and saying this is severe and this is less severe. It is not to say that it is okay for people to get away with behaviors, but the punishment should be proportional to the offense committed. So even though we say that PoSH Act does not cater to intent while admitting the complaint, it is very, very important for one to know that the intent is a very important element while deliberating on a punishment. So I've seen people give very disproportionate punishment. Sometimes there was a case where I think this company was trying to terminate a respondent just based on the fact that there was a complaint on them. And it was something of a mistake of being in close proximity. He accidentally touched someone and he said sorry for it right then as well, and during the complaint case as well. And the IC members over there wanted to terminate the employee. So we had to step in and remake the report. Otherwise, the respondent was very aggravated that how can this be the result? I was just standing and my leg touched her leg, and this can't be the reason for me to get terminated. I really didn't intend to do this. So at that point, maybe the solution could be that bring in the parties, do conciliation, bring them to the same page. Maybe an apology is what she wants in a formal manner. Maybe over there that can be resolved in that manner. So I think intent is very, very important while deliberating. That being said, I would like to come to, I think someone has asked a question here. What about consensual relationships impacting others in an out of office event? So that's an interesting question. Would Amita or Darshi, any of you want to take this up?
I think consenting relationship, whenever we talk about the awareness sessions, on sensitized, so we have a section which is specifically addressed on this consent, because no matter how much, try to avoid, but there is a high probability. If I talk about my, earlier experience as a IC member, so there were a lot of cases wherein the consenting relationship, there was a relationship, and later on it turns sour, something happens out of office, and then it has been, a sexual harassment cases were being reported. But then there is always a risk associated with it. I think as an organization, we should create a lot of awareness around it, that no matter what, this can get into a different mood. So yeah, that's what I feel on this.
Then what is your take on this?
Yeah, could I answer on this consensual relationship?
Sundar, can I please
Yeah, you can park it.
answer to the end of the session so that
Yes. Because there is a case law on that. That's the reason.
okay, yes. I think you can input the case law. Let's just
Yeah, see, there was a consensual relationship between a teacher, and the lady teacher had made a sexual harassment complaint against the male teacher. And the male teacher was terminated after the inquiry by the PoSH. And after that was over, the respondent was terminated. And the petitioner, what happened was, after 6 months after the termination, they got married. And she pleaded with the school, telling that why he has been terminated when we have become husband and wife now. They said at the point of influx, you are not in relationship. We don't know whether it is compulsive relationship, natural relationship, or induced relationship. So therefore, in that particular case, that lady also was terminated on the grounds that you are also nurturing certain things which has cost the company, the institution a lot. I think that was a fair decision. So therefore, consensual relationship, if you see it was induced or situational or it was forced to, even the courts have said very, very clearly, consensual relationship cannot be accepted just because they have given consent now.
I got the point, Sundar, but
Yes.
I'd like to stop you here. And I would also like to reiterate that consensual relationships are not banned in workplaces. You can have consensual relationships in workplaces. I would like to see this order, which court did this, because there are a lot of judgments that come ruling on relationships at workplace. And it is impossible at this day and age to ban consensual relationships at a workplace, but that's okay. The question, I think, was to see whether when two people are out in a relationship already and they are exhibiting affection in an office event, and if others are uncomfortable. So the question here is very, very clear that they are in a relationship and it is affecting the team members. So I think companies need to have relationship policies in place where they take a stand on this, whether they want consensual relationships or don't want consensual relationships within the workplace. And also to say that whether if someone is displaying PDA at workplace, they are not maintaining professionalism. So that needs to be detailed out in a relationship policy, that even if you are in a consensual relationship, do whatever you want. We are not moral policing anyone in the workplace, but out of workplace, please keep it outside. If you're bringing it to the workplace, then others might feel uncomfortable. That being said, I think I'll let Darshi answer the question on consensual relationships, because I think you'll have a good answer.
No, so I think I completely agree on consensual relationships. Even we call it out very clearly that you could even be husband and wife, and that's the ultimate level of consensual relationship. Even if you're husband and wife and you are working in the same company, we have some basic principles around reporting lines. So obviously it can't be in a place where either party is can manage their talent management or performance management or their bonuses and so on and so forth. However, you cannot be having public displays of affection in an office environment, whether in the office or an extended workplace. You're there as colleagues. Your relationship as whether it's as a spouse or in a as a or any of those different levels of dating. In my time, there's only you're either dating or you're not. Apparently now there are 5 or 6 levels of dating as well. Whatever layer you may be on, there is no need for PDA in the in such extended environments. And if I'm to give you an example of associated consent, um, I had a case of quite a few many years back, but um, so individuals have stepped out into a office environment, extended workplace at a party. Party has got over. They've decided that the party has ended at 10 o'clock. The night is still young. We should continue our partying somewhere else. So another group of 6 to 8 employees have then gone somewhere else outside after that office event. And after that has got over, the person who was accused has asked the lady, "Will you come over to my house?" And the lady has agreed. So deep into the night, they have both now ended up at his place. Whatever's happened has happened. But the next morning, the lady has, or a few days later, the lady has come ahead and put a case forward saying that my consent wasn't there. Right? So in situations like this, the level of where your boundary of consent lies quite often can get pushed further and further and further down the road, and the lines tend to get blurred very quickly. I hear Mr. Sundar's perspective on this one. I guess where he was coming from was slightly different, which is to say that quite often the courts will look at a case of this nature and say that, look, was it a quid pro quo? An employee could quite often come back and say, I had to get into a relationship because I felt that if I did not consent, then it will go against me. So that's a kind of a forced consent. So in that sense, at times the courts may get into that definition of what kind of a relationship were you actually in.
That's definitely something that we have to look into, like whether there was an influence and whether there was an undue influence of sorts. But that being said, thank you for that input as well, Sundar. I feel like we were rushed in the discussion, so I did not want to lose out on time. That being said, I think I would like, because we are reaching the end of our session almost, I would like to get a key piece of advice from both of you to planning companies' casual events to ensure that they are fun, inclusive, and at the same time harassment free. What would be, I think Amita, you can go first, and then Darshi can close the.
Yeah. So the key piece, or to summarize whatever discussions we were doing till now, I feel the when we are planning any event well in advance, like we just discussed, we should have an event code wherein we should prescribe what are the do's and don'ts. Not sounding very preachy, but I think it makes completely sense to publish that well in advance. Create the sensitization just around the maybe a month before, and we have so many various models, right? We can have a digital drive, maybe like we have something known as spotlight emailer, weekly mailer. So maybe you can keep on sending certain bites wherein some examples of such informal events, some conversation, maybe in some interesting manner, you can start releasing to the employees and create that sensitization. Thirdly, the bystanders or maybe the volunteers should be well trained and should be made aware about the SOPs in case if such event, if at all happens. What are the SOPs? What are the do's and don'ts? Maybe a help desk can be created at an event wherein an employee should be made aware well in advance that if you notice any situation, these are the people, these are the security people who are there. I think all these things need to be taken into consideration. While we want employees to have fun and have a good time and bond and gel with their team members, but certain do's and don'ts should be, I think this sensitization will really help. And, somewhere in their subconscious mind, everybody will be, all this will be there in their mind. So I think this will help.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I think
Thanks for that, Amita. I think all of everything that Amita said, and a few things that I've already mentioned earlier in the discussion. So I think it all comes down to awareness. And we take it one step further at Swiss Re. Before every event of such nature, there is in fact a declaration that we make everybody sign. It's a digital one. But it just says, I know the code of conduct of the organization. I understand the PoSH regulations, and I fully understand it that this is something I will abide by during this event. Again, yet events still happen. So we are human beings. Humans are infallible in that sense. So things will always happen. I think it's just important that we ensure that people know what their rights are, employees know what their rights are, what they should say yes or no to, and bystanders understand that what should I do, what is my role. If I see something like this happen to one of my colleagues, it may not be happening to me, but I'm seeing it happening to somebody else. So crowdsource the responsibility is what I would say on the lighter side.
yeah.
Organization can't be everywhere all the time. HR can't be everywhere all the time. We don't have so many eyes. Can't keep a track of everything that's going on. So crowdsource the responsibility, and you'll realize that when you ask people to take on responsibility, they will themselves be a lot more conscious of their own actions, leave aside somebody else's. So that's what I would recommend.
Thank you so much for both those inputs. I think you thoroughly summed up how one can go about these issues. And also, I was kind of answering someone on the chat where they said, what are the practices to be considered? So it's just about having fun responsibly. The HR or the person cannot be present everywhere. So make sure everyone gets that training to create, to be in a safe workplace. Have to be the flag bearer of a safe workplace. So crowdsourcing the responsibility is a great idea, and make sure everyone is trained on consent, everyone understands what boundaries are, regular training sessions for employees, managers, IC members on their specific roles. And also to say that your training sessions shouldn't end at one employee awareness session that happened 3 years ago. It needs to keep being reiterated to them. It's not a check in the box. Workplace safety comes from constant effort. And like Darshi said, that getting a declaration signed or getting that culture check in place at all times. I think those are some really important things to do to make sure that you are thinking workplace safety and not just fulfilling a compliance, because that never results. And even after so many efforts, if companies are still facing, then imagine without efforts how much do people face, like the kind of cases that do come across. And we are living in a world where we just had the Kolkata incident and so much more happening at workplaces. So I hope this discussion helped. Is there any questions?
Yeah, I have just 1 minute, Meenakshi. Yeah. See, what I really liked the way that Darshi and Amita gave the pointers. I did have a similar incident in one organization where they had a annual day function, and there were drinks and there were fallouts. And when they asked me for the following year what we shall do, I said completely banned, because what you can't manage, you have to be controlled. If there is no self-control, then don't provide them this tempting. And I always feel respectful acceptance and fellowship is always followed. People may not, those people who want to have the liquor on the lips, they do not have it. Others will tell him, yes, I think good, we did not have it. And they also like it, he did not have it because in a different. I know in one organization, one of the male member did invite two women employees, are you coming for the party tonight? And these people said, why? No, I want you to come. Why you want us to come? He said, if I'm drunk, I don't know what I'm doing. And these two people did not go. So the message is very clear. Organization was not able to control the indiscipline. So very, very clear. There has to be no risk zone because we as HR people, we are conscious. In one incident makes a very big one. So it should be a conscious effort for developing a culture of everybody is ownership. And if you're going to have certain parties with the drinks, then as Dash said it, there should be buddies, watchdogs, and controllers.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
no tolerance to misbehavior, using it as a frivolous freedom.
Yeah. This another question in the group, because we have some 3 minutes, we can, I think, take that up. Does a company have rights to say no alcohol in all out of office parties or after? So here, would any of you like to take it up, Darshi or Amita?
I'm aware of organizations that have done that. There is nothing wrong in doing so. It's the organization prerogative to define whether alcohol should or should not be there in any
Yeah.
event. There are organizations. So, for example, my brother is also an HR professional. In his organization, um, even when you're traveling, you cannot it could be something as simple as that. He cannot reimburse an alcohol bill. So he's traveled for work, but he
Hmm.
cannot reimburse an alcohol bill. So it depends. It completely depends on the organization's risk appetite on such matters, and that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong in it.
Yeah.
Yes. So also Wipro, so also IBM. IBM has a very not now, it's more than 15 years.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think what if they are traveling and staying in a hotel, even if they're paying, company can say no on trips. I think companies can only stop to an extent and say that in our offsites we don't want to have alcohol. That being said, even if you have alcohol, I think there needs to be a moral understanding amongst people that needs to be given. And sometimes in your training sessions also mentioning that just because a woman has had alcohol, she's giving consent, all of these kind of thought processes need to be removed from people. And moreover, companies can restrict alcohol to an extent that in our offsite we won't serve alcohol, but you cannot stop people from drinking outside anyway. And uh, this is what happens in colleges, even, like, let alone offices. Even in colleges, people go to their farewell parties or whatever happens outside, they'll drink and then go to these events, right? So it's very difficult to control after a point, but company can say that we are not going to provide, or we will not have alcohol in our parties. That being said, even if there is alcohol, make sure there are enough provisions in place for out. I also know of this one place where, it's a cafe where they have written in the women's washroom that in case you feel like someone's being inappropriate with you, order a certain drink and we'll understand that someone is being inappropriate with you. So these kind of provisions are also there. So many innovative ways that you say a code word or something where we'll understand instantly and intervene if you're not feeling safe enough to come and communicate that. So there are many ways. So I hope we keep exploring this topic as a thing. And you can, for any further doubts, reach out to us at info@kelphr.com. Thank you everyone for making time for this session, and it was very insightful. Thank you so much, Darshi and Amita, for bringing in so many perspectives which are varied and also so thorough. I really love the work that you all are doing in your own companies because you have certain best practices that you have given us here, and I think that is what is wonderful. So, and I hope that we can also collaborate on future ILAs and future ILA webinars that we do. So thank you so much, everyone. I think at this point we can call it a really amazing session. I loved it. I'm going to do a self declaration of it. But yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining. And also thank you Prasanna and a couple of other people who had asked these very insightful questions. It really shapes the discussion much better. So looking forward to your participations as well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
See
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.